The Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder are set to face off in the NBA Finals starting next Friday. The Oklahoma City Thunder have been a juggernaut all year, but nobody expected the Pacers to make it this far. So let's talk about 5 of the biggest questions I have for this series. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Court Vision. Like I said, in this video, I'm going to give you 5 questions that I think are going to determine the outcome of this series. I'm doing 5 today instead of 3. You know, the finals is a big deal. So I got to do a couple extra questions. It's been a while since my last video, but as you can probably hear in my voice, I've been a little under the weather. Without further ado, let's get into it. These two teams have really different identities, and that's what my first question is all about, is which team can really enforce their identity more effectively. For Indiana, their identity offensively is all about pace, motion, and passing to kind of create advantages. OKC's identity defensively is all about covering ground and rotating quickly to deny advantages from an offensive team. OKC loves to force turnovers, get deflections and steals with heavy pressure in passing lanes and with timely help. You know, they're number 1 in defensive turnover percentage in the playoffs, most total steals and steals per game, almost 11 steals per game in the playoffs for this team. They are forcing the most opponent turnovers per game with 18. Indiana, on the other hand, is great with ball security. They have the 5th best offensive turnover percentage in the playoffs, 5th fewest turnovers per game with just 12.7. And then Halliburton, as a primary ball handler, has an assist-to-turnover ratio of over 5-1 in these playoffs, which is really elite. One part of this identity question is, can the Thunder win this battle and turn over the Pacers a lot and deny their offense? Or are the Pacers going to be able to keep their ball security and deny the Thunder's greatest statistical strength defensively? Another thing about this identity clash is Indiana in the half court wants to create those advantages with action after action and motion, both on the ball and off the ball, to break down the defense as quickly as possible. But the Thunder are by far the best team in the league, and maybe just in NBA history, at covering ground with those closeouts and timely rotations to deny the specific types of advantages that the Indiana Pacers offense is so good at creating. You know, we saw how good OKC's defense is at this in the Western Conference Finals against Minnesota, where the Timberwolves just routinely couldn't create advantages and would have to work 20 plus seconds for a shot on almost every possession in certain stretches. So can the Thunder limit those advantages with their closeouts and with their rotations, and thus Indiana's offense, or are the Pacers going to be successful in getting their game off? Another thing is the pace and transition frequency that Indiana plays with. OKC is really well equipped with their personnel and depth to pick the Pacers up really high and potentially even from full court. Which can they leverage that to deny those hit-ahead passes and pace in transition that Indiana wants? OKC in these playoffs has been statistically the best team defending in transition, but Indiana is a totally different beast, pushing off of makes and misses alike, and with a unique style that no other team really has. Indiana has not really been shut down or shut off offensively in more than 1 or 2 games per series all postseason, and it's really hard to prevent them from playing the game that they want to play. But if any team can do it, it's for sure the Oklahoma City Thunder, with how good they are at doing exactly what needs to be done to defend the Pacers. The second question I have for this series is, how good is the second guy going to be for each team? For the Indiana Pacers, that's going to be Pascal Siakam. For OKC, that's going to be Jalen Williams. How good are both of these guys going to be as scorers? Pascal is an X factor for the Pacers offense and can be kind of a last resort go-to scorer if OKC is having success defending their Pacers offense. You know, his scoring on the break and in the open floor also serves as a kind of bellwether for Indiana's transition offense. If he's having a good game running in transition, usually the team is having a good game running in transition. Whereas for OKC, J-Dub is going to have to continue to take on a lot of responsibility as a scorer, with Shea facing so much defensive attention and with Shea off the floor as well. Pascal Siakam has had an up and down playoffs as a scorer, but a lot of that I think comes down to the team not needing him to be as much of a go-to scorer, but he's also quietly heated up recently, especially in this series against the Knicks. He had 3 30 bombs, powering the Pacers to 3 of their 4 wins in that series on over 60% true shooting throughout all 6 games. And he was super effective as a catch-and-shoot guy within the flow of the offense as well, shooting 50% from outside in that series, which is unsustainably high, but a good sign that he's in good form going into this final series. He's also been really hot as a scorer, hunting mismatches when he gets those switches on actions he's involved in, which will be something to watch against an OKC team that has a lot of smaller defenders. In terms of matchups on Pascal, J-Dub will probably be the best thing that they have for him. Concedes a little bit of size to Pascal, but J-Dub is so good at defending up that it doesn't really matter. I mean, he was all defense for a reason. If Jalen Williams is not on him, then it'll be one of the bigs, but that's a little dicier. Chet, I worry about just straight up getting bodied or being a little more susceptible to strong post moves with his, thinner frame and lack of lower body strength because of that injury from earlier in the season. Whereas Hartenstein is a good matchup physically, size, and strength-wise, but isn't nearly as quick as Pascal is driving or in the post. And beyond that, Alex Caruso, will probably see him a little bit too, who he had a great series in the conference finals defending Julius Randle, which is kind of a similar matchup, measurables wise, but the size is, a little bit of a concern. Pascal will probably be fairly comfortable facing him up or shooting over him in a lot of situations, so we'll just have to see how effectively OKC can defend him. Moving to Jalen Williams now, he's had some really tough stretches in the playoffs, especially in that second round against Denver, but he heated up a lot against the Wolves in the conference finals. He had a couple very big scoring games, but more importantly for me, his efficiency was just so much better across the board. That was a big concern for me ahead of that conference finals series, was his efficiency. But his midi game, his three-point shooting, his rim finishing have all been better in the conference finals than they were throughout the rest of the playoffs. Overall in the playoffs, he shot 45.7% from the field, just 62% at the rim, and 31.8% from three, so not good numbers across the board. But in the conference finals, he was about 50% from the field and 46% from three, which are much better numbers. He averaged about 2 more points per game on the same amount of shots in the Western Conference Finals as compared to the playoffs as a whole, which sounds small, but it was really huge to the eye test and to how the Timberwolves were defending him, with how much more of a threat he was able to be offensively and how much more pressure he was able to take off of Shea. If OKC's offense is going to have any success in this series, he's going to need to keep that up. I think Jalen Williams' playmaking has also quietly been very good in the last couple series as well. I think he makes good reads handling the ball in transition, and he's improved a lot as a pick and roll ball handler, specifically finding cutters off the ball or making lob passes that he wasn't making consistently in the first round. He's going to continue to have those opportunities to be the ball handler and make decisions in this series as he has had throughout the playoffs. So let's see if he can keep it up. My third question for this series is, which team's depth has the bigger impact? For Indiana, their depth really allows them to do what they want to do, running in transition and keeping the energy high all game while wearing on their opponents with the relentless pace. But OKC is a team that has plenty of depth to match that and limit that as an advantage. Both of these teams routinely are going 9, 10, even sometimes 11 guys deep. So which team's depth is going to come up bigger in this series? Feels like I say this in every video I do about the Pacers, but they have 6 guys in this postseason averaging over 10 points per game, and they have multiple guys off the bench who can be ball handlers and scorers when needed. TJ McConnell has been a little quieter in the last series or two, but he's still very much a presence, keeping the pace high and driving the offense off of the bench, while Benedict Mathurin has had some electric moments in certain electric games, especially in the conference finals. In that series, he had 71% true shooting, which was just ridiculous. I think he deserves some more minutes, and he's going to need to perform in the series against OKC as a scorer. Guys like McConnell and Mathurin having a good series could be the difference between Indiana having a good offense and Indiana having an offense that is good enough to beat OKC in certain games. And I haven't even mentioned Obi Toppin, who's really impressed me, with his defensive activity and his screening and play finishing offensively as well. On the other hand, OKC has a million guys that they can go to off the bench as well. They have 3-and-D guys like Case and Wallace and Alex Caruso, who are both starter caliber defenders, as well as, Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe going even deeper into the bench, who they can go to based on who's in form, who's shooting well, who's right for the specific matchup, etc. And they also have the other Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams as depth bigs if they need to go to that for any reason. Kind of, parallel to the identity discussion from the first question, Indiana has plenty of scorers and offensive guys off the bench, while OKC has plenty of defenders off the bench. With both teams having such a solid starting five, the bench guys are going to be important and potentially could be the difference maker necessary in this series to win 4 out of 7 games. My fourth question for this series is, how well can the Indiana Pacers defend Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Defending Shai is obviously going to be priority number 1 for the Pacers on defense. He's the head of the snake, and he's potentially the most important player to his team's offense, maybe besides Nikola Jokic. What he does for this OKC team's offense is immeasurable and super, super necessary. So a lot of pressure is going to be on Aaron Nesmith and maybe Andrew Nembhard as well as that primary guy defending him. Nembhard is a little smaller maybe than Indiana would like to defend Shai consistently, but with how good he was defending Jalen Brunson and some other guys in that New York series, I can see them being willing to give him that matchup sometimes. Shai is going to want to get to the line and put Nesmith and Nembhard in foul trouble, though, if he can. Nesmith has had 4 and 5 fouls, a good amount through these playoffs as the primary matchup for the other team's best player, but has yet to foul out, which is a good sign. And Andrew Nembhard has been elite at not fouling, just 43 fouls over 16 games in the postseason. Very good job from him. Regardless, both of these guys have to stay out of foul trouble because after them, there's not really a great answer for the primary matchup on Shai. Pascal Siakam is capable, but they want him to be defending Jalen Williams and OKC's bigs a little more if they can. And then off the bench, there's not many great options. You've got guys like Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, and Benedict Mathurin, who are solid defenders, but not really good enough guys to be the primary matchup on Shai in the NBA Finals. So they got to stay out of foul trouble. Indiana also, as a team, doesn't really love sending a lot of extra help or so-called exotic coverages at guys, but that's really been the best way or the only way to slow Shai down as a scorer in these playoffs. We saw it with Denver. So how much do the Pacers go to those extra help coverages and exotic coverages? I can see them playing it more straight up to start the series and adjusting it as the series goes on. But in my opinion, the smarter thing to do would be to test some of these guys in OKC's rotation who haven't proven that they can consistently punish defenders for helping off of them. For example, you have guys like Chet Holmgren, who hasn't shot the ball super well in these playoffs, or Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, who have been inconsistent three-point shooters throughout the playoffs. You could help off of those guys and see how well they respond to try and feel out OKC's offense and what you can get away with defensively and what you can't. My fifth question, last question here for this video, is can the Thunder punish Indiana's thin 5-man rotation? The best offensive look in terms of bigs for the Thunder has been with Chet at the 5, going single big all playoffs long. The offensive rating numbers back this up as well. But they also have been playing a lot of teams that are bigger. You have Memphis with Edie and JJJ. You have Minnesota, who has, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, and Julius Randle. And then Denver, who has Jokic and Aaron Gordon in the starting lineup. Indiana, in contrast, is a lot less deep at the 4 and the 5 than these other teams, especially at the backup 5, where we're seeing minutes being played either by Pascal as the backup 5 or with Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley. So you have to think OKC is going to want to try and use their double big lineup or some of their bigger lineups with guys like big Jalen Williams or Kenrich Williams in certain minutes to try and make those 3 guys work defensively. Pick and roll targeting Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley, or Isaiah Hartenstein being the roll man with Chet in the dunker spot as like a dump off option. Things like this to really put pressure on the Pacers' 5-man rotation. The size advantage in these lineups could create a big advantage for the Thunder as a team if those minutes are good offensively and if Tony Bradley or Thomas Bryant become unplayable defensively. Another thing to consider when it comes to size is the Pacers low-key got killed on the glass by Mitchell Robinson in certain stretches against that Knicks in that series. You know, OKC is not an exceptional rebounding team, but Isaiah Hartenstein can definitely try to do something similar in certain minutes, so something to be aware of and to keep an eye on as we go into this series. All right, and then for a short little bonus question, what does the three-point shooting variance end up looking like? You know, Indiana's been really hot from outside all postseason. OKC's been cold and a little inconsistent. If Indy wants to win, they're going to have to continue being hot. And if OKC wants to win, they're going to need to be a little better from outside to keep up with Indiana's offensive numbers. That is everything I have for this video. Thank you, everybody. If you watched this far, remember to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm going to continue to be making videos throughout the rest of the NBA Finals and into the postseason. So subscribe if you want to see that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.